Welcome to Money and Purpose, a podcast exploring how to optimize your personal finances so that you can align your money with what is most important to you. I'm your host, Marianne Poon, CFA charter holder and financial advisor. Joining me today is Carl Richards, a globally recognized voice in personal finance. He's the creator of The Behavior Gap and a decade-long columnist for the New York Times and the author of several best-selling books. Carl's work has helped millions rethink their relationship with money and inspired a more intentional approach to financial decision-making. Hi, Carl. So I first read your Behavior Gap book in 2012, and it changed my life, inspired me to go from corporate finance to personal financial planning. So I've been following your work ever since. And so this is an extremely meaningful conversation to me. And I think it's wonderful that I'm now helping other people also align their money with their values. So thank you for being on the show. I'm really excited to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm equally as excited about the conversation, so thanks for doing it.
Can we just jump into some of your sketches? They're brilliant.
That would be great.
So the first one is a happiness alignment. And a lot of us, like, money comes in, money comes out. We generally spend, where our values are. How do you know when you've truly aligned your values with your finances? Is it worth doing that? And will you get something out of that?
It's a great question. And I think that you're pointing at something that's sort of at the heart of the matter in my mind. And that's just simply slowing down long enough to notice, right? So the way, how do we know? We experiment. Like, we practice and we experiment. So just like you would with anything else that you haven't done before, or maybe you've even tried and you recognize you're not very good at, like that's the case for me. Like, I'm not always really good at aligning my use of capital, money, and time and energy and attention with what is important to me. And that would be a definition of how we could be aligned, right? Is our use of capital is aligned with what's important to us. And that will generate, my contention is that will generate more happiness than when it's not aligned. So I think the way we do that is we practice. One of my favorite examples is that my wife and I really value close friendships. And we thought that a good way to invest in that value, so underneath this is close friendships, right? We thought a good way to invest in that value would be dinner and movie. So dinner out and then go to a movie together, because that's kind of what we thought. That's what everybody says, right? So we did that intentionally for a while. And we noticed, like, wait, if we value connection and deep friendship, going to a noisy restaurant and then to the movies is not a good way to invest in that value, right? Like, there could be other values like entertainment, right? But we realized that and we're like, we noticed we tried something different. We said, like, what if we invite people over to our house? We have all the ingredients, they come, we prepare the meal together, we eat the meal together. Like, we spend 2 or 3 hours together in conversation while doing something meaningful. That was a much better value. Now, the only way we realized that and then made that change in alignment, by the way, it probably was a little cheaper, but it doesn't really even matter. The fact that it cost a little bit less to have dinner at the house wasn't the important part. The cost was, what's the best way to align our time and money with the value of friendship? So the only reason we've made that change is because we noticed, right? We asked, like, what is it we're really after here? And are we getting it? So that's how I'd answer that question: is you practice, you notice, you just ask questions, like, gently, like, is this the best way to realize that value? Like, sometimes you'd think, like, travel. Well, what is it about travel? Is it like new experiences? Is it seeing things you've never seen before? So just get at the value underneath the spending, and that will help you consider alternatives and ways to make the investment more aligned.
Right. And that brings me to when values collide. Like, we know that it makes sense to ask all these questions, but also there is some comfort in ignoring things and just assuming that things will kind of work out, right? So how balance the two?
Yeah, I think you do that the same way you would balance any two competing values. So, like, adventure and stability, like, that's one that really competes in my head and my heart, actually. Like, I love being out, adventure and travel, but I also love that we're at a house for the first time in our adult lives where we planted, even the trees are growing, that we planted. So I love both of those. And I think the way you deal with that is you recognize that tension between the present and the future, between adventure and stability, between asking questions and deciding to ignore it for a little while. All of those are fine. And instead of treating them as, and this is actually, you're pointing to, that essay has the line I'm most proud of in the whole book. If I had to work for 20 more years to get another one of these lines, I would do it. And the line is, your values are not at war, they're in conversation. And that's in that essay, right? Like, this tension we feel, tension keeps bridges up. Tension's not bad. We don't need to have the goal of resolving it necessarily. we can live in the tension, and sometimes we'll lean towards adventure and sometimes we'll lean towards stability. And to your point, which I love, sometimes we'll lean to introspective questions and sometimes we'll lean to just taking a long bath and ignore, turning on Netflix and eating some ice cream. Like all of that stuff, it's all fine, right? It's all fine. And we don't need to be like,
or
totally, it's
right.
And just live in the tension a bit and realize there are periods of your life, periods of your day, periods of your week that you'll just say, you know what, I've had enough of that. I'm just going to read an enjoyable novel, right? That's fine too.
Right. So I have a lot of clients that tell me, oh, my finances aren't that complicated,
Right.
everything's fine, right? Then we start doing an inventory and we start adding the things up that are seemingly uncomplicated. So money isn't just about math. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah.
And what makes things complicated?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things to what you said. One is sometimes there's this sense when you start like unpacking things, you're like, I was fine before. Like, why is it so complicated now? What? Well, we didn't realize that we were living in a state of kind of constant frustration and urgency. And I don't know how to pay that bill. And I don't like, yeah, was it really fine before? And sometimes I think of this as like the progress you can make if you envision a J. Sometimes we refer to this as moving along the J curve, right? Sometimes you're living on the, the left-hand side of a J, the small side of the J. And as soon as you start working on it, it actually gets worse. You're going down the J, right?
Yeah.
Like you imagine teaching your kids to do the dishes. It's the same thing, right? Like it's just easier to do the dishes.
Yeah.
Like it's way more energy to teach than to do the dishes. So you're sort of like opening things up. You're moving down the J. Like, why are we doing this? This is ridiculous. It's making matters worse. But there comes a point where on the other side, you're building systems, you're building new habits,
Right.
you're building foundations, and you get to the same point you were, but realize now you're going to blast through on the tall side of the J, right? By building those systems. There's a parable actually in one of our wisdom traditions that talks about counting the cost, right? Like counting the cost of building a building before you start building.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes that's what you're pointing to is like, and this happens like you go to the gym, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Right.
You're going to be sore. You're going to think this is stupid. Why am I even doing this? Right? Like anything worth doing, any muscle worth building, any habit worth having often involves that moment where you're like, this is dumb, where you're going down the J curve. And so I would just say like, stick with it.
Right. You have a sketch for that. The other side of complexity, where it's simple and then it's really chaotic and then it comes out, and you call it elegant simplicity, which is actually quite difficult to achieve.
Yeah, it's just as a description of that sketch. Imagine if you're like, I need to open a new bank. You know what? I just need a credit card. And that seems like such a simple thing. Like, I just need a credit card. And then as you start doing it, you're moving along the line, this really simple straight line. And then you start asking questions like, wait, the reward system and how much do I pay? And is there an annual fee? And suddenly it's like, I just wanted a credit card. But you're in the middle of this thing that looks like a ball of yarn.
Right.
Right? It's so complex, so many things to consider. And then after all of that, you come out the other side and you're like, you know what? 2% cash back, Capital One card's fine or whatever. I shouldn't even mention names so we don't get hung up on it. But you can say that's fine. And then what that represents is that you're in a different place now, though, because you considered everything. You went through everything. And now you know that this simple, elegantly simple solution is considering everything else. This is fine.
So one of the sketches is your blind spots. And what is the role of an advisor and how do they help you with your blind spots? A good advisor, I should say.
Yes, this is true. Almost no one that I know of has hired a financial advisor because they're dumb.
Right.
Right. Like they could probably do it on their own if they had the inclination, the time, and the energy.
Right.
And no blind spots. And blind spot, by definition, this is the most profound thing I'll say. You can't see your own. You know what I mean? Like you can't see your own blind spots. And so that's kind of behavior where you're like, and our financial planner has pointed this out to me. Like, do you realize that you keep saying that word or you keep doing that you're doing the same thing you did last year and the year before? Like, I didn't know. So I think the role of a good financial planner is often to point out the inconsistencies in our own behavior and especially our inauthentic behavior. Right? Where we say this is important to us when we're thinking clearly,
Right.
and then we go behave this way.
Right.
Right? Who can do that in your life? Feel like if you've tried it with a spouse or partner, there's kind of a strong disincentive to not do it. I mean, good spouses and
Yes.
partners, we still do it, but my wife still shows up and tells me when there's broccoli between my teeth, right?
Right.
But a good advisor should know you well enough to be like, you've always said time with your family, mainly outside, is really important, and I'm noticing that you're spending this way. That feels in conflict. Let's talk talk about it, right? Or you said that you wanted to retire and not worry about being a burden to the kids, and then we need to invest this way. And now you're saying you want to get out because you're super scared. I understand the scared part, but these two things are in conflict. Let's talk about them. Maybe there's change we can make. There's no judgment here. It's just, here's what you said. Here's what you're doing. Let's talk about it. Yeah. So I think that is the role of an advisor.
I love the no shame, no blame.
Yeah.
You know, people sometimes are afraid like, oh, I made this mistake or I made that mistake. And you said shame says you were dumb and responsibility says that was dumb. And I think that's huge that people can see.
Yeah. And if you feel shame about mistakes you've made with money, like welcome to the club. We all do, and we can be deeply empathetic with one another. And I think we just need to realize like the mistake might have been silly or misinformed or even dumb. That doesn't make you dumb. And those are two very different things.
Right. I mean, money decisions and life, it's impossible to go through life without having made any mistakes, right? So
I think I made one today.
Ooh, what'd you do?
I mean, I spent money on some, like I have this problem despite having a 72-hour rule with Amazon. Like I have a list. You can have lists in your account. And when I go to buy a book, it has to go on the 72-hour list before I buy it. And if it's still there, if I still want it 3 days later, fine. Buy the book, no problem. Because I noticed that I end up like I would hear something on a podcast. I'd buy the book immediately. It would show up. I'd be like, where did this come from? And then I wouldn't read it. You wouldn't believe how long the 72-hour list of books that went in there and never came out. I broke that rule the other day and ended up with 2 books on my doorstep and was like, how did this happen? And I had to take them and return them and do all that stuff. So yeah, that's an example of a mistake that I've even built guardrails around it and I still make it sometimes.
I know sometimes I'm like, what did I order? I must not need it that desperately, you know, but at the time I really needed it.
It was super important. Yeah, for sure.
Super important. Can we talk about taxes? Tax planning, not tax reporting. Tell me more. Do you have examples?
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. Most of the time we think about doing taxes as a reporting function, something that you do after everything's occurred. And even most CPAs operate this way, and bless their souls, it's not because they don't want to, it's just because they're so busy and their business model doesn't really allow them to be super strategic. I mean, there's obviously exceptions to that. And the CPAs I talk to complain about this. Like they want to be strategic, but they largely just have to keep doing reporting called filing taxes. Well, that's what we mostly think about with taxes, but tax planning is a completely different experience. And tax planning is it's so interesting because every dollar you save in taxes, that's 100% return, right? Like on that particular dollar, right? And just one time, this is not like you get 100% every year, but it's like a big deal. And so I think thinking about things, and again, I'm not talking about doing anything. I mean, there's the tax code is not black and white, unfortunately. There's lots of gray area. But even if you were trying to stick with just black and white, there's still plenty of, are you tracking mileage? It could be a deduction because you're using your car for business purposes on those miles, right? Like that's a simple, I just go in Google Maps, and the trip I just took, if it was clearly for business, I can just quickly put it in Google Maps, save that. There's the mileage right there. What I drove, save that. And so that's an idea of, you can think about appreciated stock is one that people often miss. Like if you're making donations and you've also got appreciated stock, especially something that you might need to diversify anyway, those are some examples of, they require a little bit of forethought, but they're completely within black and white rule of tax planning.
Yes. Even putting it in the correct retirement vehicle is huge, and people don't often see how big the impact can be.
For sure. These are things in the tax code. The tax code is meant to incentivize certain types of behavior. Right. And so if saving for retirement in a certain way helps you save more for retirement, that was the whole purpose. Of course, we should be taking advantage of that. Like that was the whole purpose.
Right. Let's talk about risk.
Yeah, it's my favorite subject.
That's your favorite subject.
Yes.
I couldn't pick which one to pick to talk about. They're all so good.
Yeah.
I thought of everything except for this. Or, the probability versus the consequences.
Let's talk about that one.
Risk versus exposure.
Yeah, that's really good too. But probability consequences is one of my favorite just because this really clarified for me what was going on in my head, especially as a teenager, but my brain hasn't really changed all that much. So I'm still largely focused on, but it also clarified my conversations with my kids.
Right.
Because when you're a teenager, you're almost exclusively focused on the probability of an event occurring, which is why you tune out your parents when they say things like incredibly important things like don't text and drive.
Right.
Because everyone does it. And almost no one ever has a problem. Almost no one. Right. But when they do, people die.
Yes.
right? Like it helps to frame like all the kids are hearing is the probability of it. They're not really understanding the consequences. And so understanding both when you make a decision. So we talk with our kids are all grown now, but they could all tell you, what kind of terrain are we in here? And if something goes wrong, are we like skin your knee, right? If something goes wrong, are we like talking about skin your knee? Are we talking about going to the hospital, or are we talking about somebody dying?
Right.
That's a very different decision.
Right.
And so both the probability, like if there's a 1% probability of an event occurring, and if it occurs, you lose everything, that's a completely different decision than there's a 99% event occurring and you're going to lose $1,000.
Right.
And I just think understanding both should be part of the decision-making process.
Yes. So taking into account the outliers and planning for that.
Yeah. Outliers are important too, just to think of like outliers are the sorts of things that you don't see coming. And so what's the solution to that? I mean, that can feel fatalistic almost, but the solution is just get more generally resilient.
Right.
Right? Not event specific resilience, because you don't know the event. Nobody knew COVID was coming.
Right.
And many people would argue almost nobody knew the global financial crisis. Like any major event, of course, there are people who do revisionist history afterwards, but any major event that catches us all by surprise, well, it's a surprise because we didn't think about it. So there was no way to prepare for it. What you prepare for instead is being generally resilient. Like an emergency fund is general resilience. Certain types of insurance, like umbrella policies, those are general resilience.
For
Your
sure.
health is general resilience.
Yes, definitely. So what are your favorite sketches? I know the iconic one, the iconic investment returns versus investor returns, the behavior gap.
I've really enjoyed some of the ones about, like there's some early in the book around envy. You're cultivating your comparison set. How much do you make? Is mine bigger than yours? Some of those like natural human challenges, like we've been talking about envy forever. Right. And so enough has been one of my favorite subjects lately. Just like, what is enough? What does it even mean? What will it feel like when you get there? Because you know this, if it's a number, you'll never get there.
Right.
Because as soon as you get there, it'll move. You'll move the number up. So it's almost more like something you have to be rather than something you have to have.
Right.
So I've enjoyed those sketches. And then I also love, just because visually I really like it, the range of outcomes sketch, which sort of has now going into the future, there's like 6 or 7 different possible outcomes. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one too.
Wonderful. And so with this book, what is your hope to put out into the world? What do you hope people take away from everything?
Just this, like this idea of the book is really, I care about the book, but I only really, the book is a means to an end, not the end in and of itself. And the end is conversations. I just think of the book as a forcing function for good conversations about money. And that's my hope is, a humble little goal of, I want the book to start 1 million conversations.
Conversation grenades, you said.
Yeah. The kind you toss in a room and conversations break out everywhere. Like this is just sitting on your coffee table at home and a friend comes over and they flip through it. My hope is they'll be like, hey, what is this? Like, I'm not even like, I love when people are like, I'm not sure I agree with this. Great. Let's have a conversation about it. Right. Or some of them that like people sort of chuckle at, like Fear and Greed, the roller coaster one that says repeat until broke. Sometimes people will be like, yeah, I do that too. So, but whatever we can do to start more conversations like the one we're having right now, that was really the goal.
Right. And for it to be around money, because it's not something that we talk about with people, with your family, friends generally. So
yeah, and especially this way, especially like this way, right? We may talk about what we saw on the financial pornography network, the people yelling buy and buy, sell. Or maybe we talk about which budgeting app we should use, which is also fine, like fine. But what does it really mean? How does it really bump up in our lives? These kind of conversations we don't ever have.
Right. And this is where the true financial planning can help you align your happiness, really. You have that one graph where it's like the markets and your life and then the financial plan in the middle.
Yeah. So often we forget that, the markets, the products, the investments we use, they only matter in the context of our lives.
Right.
Right. There is no such thing as a great investment. Right. The only thing that is a great investment is the degree to which it impacts your life, helps you reach outperforming your neighbor is not a financial goal. Right.
Yeah.
Sending your kids to a school that they care about is a financial goal. You making work optional, like having a life of meaning and purpose. Those are financial goals.
Right. Wonderful. Well, This has been amazing. Is there anything else that you want to add or talk about?
No, just to thank you, really. This means the world to me to be able to be in conversation with people like you who are this thoughtful. So thanks for doing it. Just so honored and grateful for the number of conversations I'm already having with people. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you for the opportunity and thanks for chatting with me. I love it.
For sure. Cheers. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Bye.